All right, guys, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. My name is Eric Paulzine with 9 to 5 Sports. Going to be getting into the game-by-game breakdown for Week 4. This is where we do our deep dive to find out who are the best plays on the slate and, more importantly, why. Okay, so this is a fun video. If you guys enjoy this, make sure to like and subscribe it. Give a quick thanks to our sponsor, Sports Battle app. Sports Battle app, daily fantasy sports, prop-based app. Go to your Android and iOS to download it today. It's simple, fun to use. If you use the promo code 925, number 9, TO, and then the number 5, get bonus of 100% match on a deposit $50 or more up to $100. And then also with the referral code, you'll get $5 back as well. So make sure to use that referral code. All right, guys, let's get in today. All right, so starting out with the first game, we got the Atlanta Falcons versus the Cleveland Browns. And the Atlanta Falcons are 1-point underdog for this game, and the over and under for this game is set at 47.5. So an average game there. And I do think it's kind of crazy that the Falcons are only 1-point underdogs. The Falcons have been very impressive. If you want to compare the Falcons against like the Miami Dolphins, you could say that the Miami Dolphins should be 1-3. And you could easily make the argument that the Falcons could be undefeated. That is how close both those teams' games have been. The winning plays have went Miami's way before Thursday night, and then the Falcons, it was kind of the other way, where the winning plays that they needed to make did not go their way. A little bit of luck involved on both sides there, but my point is, the Falcons have been a very solid team thus far, so I do kind of like the Falcons to win this game. Now, the Browns are a very solid team as well, so that's why this game is set as close as it is. It does make a lot of sense, but given the fact that the Falcons are at home, I do expect them to be able to find a way to win this one. Now, I will say the nicest thing about the Cleveland Browns in terms of fantasy production is that the players that you would expect to be productive fantasy-wise have been productive, and I don't think that's going to change this week going against the Falcons. Now, yes, the Falcons have been good against the rush, so maybe it hinders the upside that Nick Chubb has, and probably at this price point, I don't see him hitting value or even exceeding value, but he should be in for a fine game. Like season-long leash, you're starting him, and you're fine with it. Kareem Hunt, on the flip side, at his price point, I do think he is also priced up a little bit too much. He has been getting enough opportunities, though, about 15 per game, which is certainly still enough at 6K. Both of them are fine plays. Both of them are not plays I'm going out of my way to make. The only player that I'm going out of my way to make, or the only play that I'm going out of my way to make in this game for the Browns is going to be Amari Cooper, who is just priced too cheap. We saw in week 1, he was wide open a ton. Jacoby Brissett just could not get him the ball. Then we saw the last 2 weeks, they realized that from week 1 that, hey, Amari Cooper's upper. We need to get him the ball. And they have. Okay, he had 10 targets in week 2, 11 targets in week 3. Now he's gotten lucky to get the 100-point bonus both those weeks, 101 yards, a couple of spot differences there, and he's at 99 yards. Not as big fantasy production there, obviously, with that 100-yard bonus not being there, but the thing is, he has been solid, okay? And at this price point, 6.3 against the Falcons, who they are a decent defense. Like A.J. Terrell has been kind of hit or miss. In week 1, he kind of got tore up defensively. And then last week, Terrell really kind of dominated DK Metcalf. Now, DK Metcalf was able to somewhat have a decent game, but DK Metcalf had a ton of targets and not a lot of receptions for most of the game. AJ Terrell was kind of able to hinder his fantasy production. So, Cooper at this price point is certainly in play, but he is not someone like I'm locking and loading. He is someone I'm looking at. Talking about the Falcons, I do really like Marcus Mariota as a play. I just talk about some of the quarterbacks that the Cleveland Browns have went up against thus far. You look at Baker Mayfield. He was able to have a productive day against the Browns. You look at the Jets. Joe Flacco went for 30 DK points in that game. And then you look at Mitchell Trubisky. He was able to score 14 DK points. So Marcus Mariota, a guy that has been a very solid quarterback thus far this season, has been getting it done with his legs a little bit as well. At 5.6, I think he's going to be able to hit value. And maybe he finally has a big breakout game. He's been very solid. The issue with him is that he's just not throwing the ball enough, okay? And that kind of just comes because, Cordell Patterson has been pretty solid running game-wise, and they just don't have enough guys. Like Drake London has looked like a stud, don't get me wrong. Kyle Pitts is, he's definitely a little bit overrated, but he is very solid. But it's kind of easy to kind of game plan around 2 players, okay? And that's kind of what's been happening. So, I don't mind Kyle Pitts. He should be able to get 7 targets. He is just priced up too much. It doesn't make sense to play him. It really hasn't made sense to play him ever because he's always been priced up too much. Drake London, he's a little bit too high priced for me as well. The Browns defense isn't terrible, okay? He's kind of just priced out on this slate. The only player that's okay is Olamide Zaccheaus, and I almost had that right. He's been playing a decent amount of snaps. He saw 67% of the snaps last week. Like, if he has a good game with like AJ Terrell or with Drake London potentially struggling, maybe he has a good game. Like, the production just hasn't been there. Now, I do just want to point out, like, Cordero Patterson is currently questionable. He's expected to play. He's been very solid for 2 out of the 3 games, and that's kind of Cordero Patterson, I think, is that, like, he can have a random big game, and if the matchup is good, he can have a big game. Now, the Rams, he just didn't get the ball enough. They kind of got down early in that game and had to come back and try to win that game. His usage in that game was strange, okay? Tyler Algier has seen a little bit of bump in his playing time from 0 in week 1 to like 35 in week 2, and then it saw it go to like 37% in week 3. Okay, that's probably going to be his cap for a while, at least while these games are competitive. So really, there's only Marcus Mariota as kind of like a one-off value play in this game for me. Like Amari Cooper, you can certainly play. I don't mind him as a play. All right, so now get into the Buffalo Bills versus the Baltimore Ravens, a matchup between 2 MVP candidates. And I'm actually curious, guys, in the comment section below, which player do you think is the current MVP? Because I think it's Lamar Jackson. A lot of people would say Jalen Hurts. A lot of people would also say Josh Allen. To me, Lamar Jackson, just given the talent that's around him, he has really put the team on his back. Okay, like he has been the player that has stepped up the most in terms of like needing him to step up in terms of like winning upside, in terms of resulting in a win. That to me has been Lamar Jackson, but you could certainly make an argument for any 3 of those guys. I'm not going to like be mad if you disagree. It's a close race and it's fun. And it's a fun matchup that we have with the Bills versus the Ravens. So like any one of them can have a good game. Lamar Jackson though is going against the Buffalo Bills, who toughest matchup on the slate. And then on the flip side, you got Josh Allen in the easiest matchup on the slate. Okay. And so for me, this is a game that I do want a game stack. But honestly, guys, I might just end up going with a lot of the Bills because, sure, the Bills are a little bit banged up on defense, but that didn't really matter last week. At the end of the game, a little bit, like Tua last week was able to kind of manufacture some plays, get some production, and have a fine game, kind of keep that in that game. And then they end up kind of, I don't want to say lucking into a victory, but they end up winning. Could that happen for Lamar Jackson? Sure, it could. Like, he could hit value. But when we're talking about certainty, we are certain. I don't want to say certainty, but there's high confidence that Josh Allen is going to be able to dominate, okay? We just look at the matchup. It is super good, okay? The Ravens, on average, have given up 28.1 DK points to opposing quarterbacks. That is the most out of any matchup on this slate. So Josh Allen, who is someone that's averaging over 30 DK points per game, that is a matchup and a game in which we want to be targeting. Josh Allen at 8.4 is someone I'm going out of my way to play. Like, it's just tough not to play him. It's tough not to lock in those like 30 DK points. Now, there is one value quarterback on the full slate that you could play that could get to 20 DK points that could kind of offset the 30 DK points that we're basically locking in from Josh Allen, just given the price point differences. But it's tough not to play Josh Allen on the slate with a lot of value available on the slate as well. So from there, guys, it is highly appealing to play both Diggs and Gabe Davis. Now, Gabe Davis, in his 2 games that he's played, has played in over 90% of the snaps. Okay, he's only gotten 6 and 5 targets. That's the worry, but he is averaging 12.8 DK points. And if he is going to be playing around 90% of the snaps once again in this game, at this price point, in this matchup, he should be able to smash. Like, if he goes for 20 DK points, that's not going to shock me at all. He should be able to go out and have a good game. He is someone I've been going out of my way to play. And then Diggs, obviously, he is priced correctly, but he's been targeted a ton. Okay, guys, it is insane. Averaging 11 targets per game and 30.5 DK points per game. I mean, he should be a safe play. Like, he should be able to get you at least 15 DK points in this game, in this matchup. So, if I am playing Josh Allen and Gabe Davis, yes, I do want to try to fit in Diggs. I do want to point out that Devin Singletary did play in over 70% of the snaps last week, and he did see 11 targets. That was something very interesting to me. If that continues, he's a great play. At this price point, he's still a solid play. Do you have to play him though? No, because we do have some other great value running back plays on the slate at the same price point, to the point where you don't have to play him. Now, talking about the Baltimore Ravens, I don't really love any one of their players. Okay, you could play Rashad Bateman. I don't love that though. Like, just not productive enough. Devin Duvernay has been doing a lot of work on a small usage rate. Okay, like just not enough targets to really think that he's going to be able to go on and dominate. And then Mark Andrews kind of priced up enough, and at this price point, it's tough to play him. Really, the only slight play that I think is okay, and I don't even like it, is Justice Hill at the minimum price. Like, if you have to play a running back and you love the rest of your build and you have 4K left over and that's it, sure, I'd be fine with Justice Hill. Game script wise, maybe he gets in a game in which the Bills are winning by a lot or something like that, and they're forced to throw the ball a little bit more, and then Justice Hill gets some work. Maybe that happens. Could see that. Not someone I'm crazy with. I don't even think I'd put him in the game stack, but he has been a very explosive running back for them thus far. He's made some very nice plays for them. All right, switching up into the Commanders versus the Cowboys game, a game that I like. The over and under for this game is set at 41, so not expected to be a high scoring game. And then the Dallas Cowboys are actually favored to win by -3. I kind of like the Commanders to win this game somewhat. We all know that kind of hinders on the play of Carson Wentz. The only issue that I have with that is that I really love the stack ability of the Dallas Cowboys in this game. So like Cooper Rush priced at 5.3, sure, I'd probably just rather go with like Marcus Mariota or Geno Smith, who's going to be the other value quarterback that I'm going to play, because I don't think Cooper Rush just has that extreme upside. Okay, I just don't really see that with him. Could you play him? Sure, you could. I'll just show you what it would look like with him. If you play him, then obviously CeeDee Lamb is a play that I like. His game was a primetime game where he went off for 22.7 DK points. Could have been more, dropped a touchdown pretty much, but the targets have been there, 11, 11, and 12. He is playing in over 90% of the snaps as well. You look at Kendall Fuller on the Commanders, who gave up 10 targets, 8 receptions, and 148 yards. That should mean that the Dallas Cowboys quarterback or receivers are able to go off and have a solid game. Like, the Commanders DBs just haven't been that good. They just really haven't been that good. So CeeDee Lamb at that price point is firmly in play. And at 4.9, Noah Brown is firmly in play as well. He's playing in over 80% of the snaps at 84. Like, that is very solid. And for a guy that's gotten 7, 5, and 9 targets and over 10 DK points in each game, in a game in which you want a game stack, we just saw Devonta Smith go off against the Washington Commanders. Like, they are a defense that you want to attack, okay? And so Noah Brown at this price point, highly appealing. Then on the flip side, you can easily run it back with McLaurin if you want to. Like 9 and 8 targets the last 2 weeks, which has been awesome. We know he's the receiver number 1. My issue with him is that he is priced up. Okay, he's only $200 cheaper than CeeDee Lamb. And to me, it's like there's a big difference there. Can he go off? Sure. Is it safe? No. And I typically am someone that likes to target safety. You guys already know that. And safety to me comes at Curtis Samuel, who should be the highest priced Washington Commanders player. It is strange that he has not been getting priced up. He's been averaging 11.6 opportunities per game, getting over 10 DK points per game. Last week he didn't score a touchdown finally and still had 13.1 DK points. In a game in which you're trying to game stack, and even just in general, he is still too cheap. Curtis Samuel could easily be a cash play for you guys this week. Solid play at that price point. And then let's just assume the Commanders are playing from behind. Like game stackability wise, like then you could play JD McKissic if you wanted to. He's had 7 and 9 targets the last 2 weeks in those kind of scenarios where they were playing from behind. A lot of dump offs to him, but really there are some other better running back plays on the slate that you could go with instead. Tight end wise, we'll have to see if Dalton Schultz is back. Jake Ferguson did play a ton. He didn't really get that many targets, 3 targets. If you had to, minimum price wise, you could play him. Not someone I'm going crazy with. Logan Thomas, I don't know. I haven't been impressed with him thus far this season. I don't want to play him. I do want to point out the biggest difference maker in this game is going to be pressure, okay? And I'm talking about with the Commanders, okay? Carson Wentz was sacked 9 times and hit 17 times last week. On the flip side, the Cowboys were able to get pressure on 12 out of 37 pass attempts they had a QB hit on, and they had 5 sacks. So that really is going to be the difference maker in this game. It's, can the Commanders hinder the solid pass rush from the Dallas Cowboys? That's the biggest difference maker in this game. Now, probably my favorite game to stack. We got the Seattle Seahawks versus the Detroit Lions. And the over and under for this game is set at 47.5. And the Detroit Lions are favored to win by 3.5 points. And I don't know. I might take the Seahawks. I don't know. I think that's kind of my bias there, just in the fact that it is easy to stack this game, and I just like Geno Smith that much more than I do Jared Goff. So looking at Geno Smith going against the Detroit Lions, a bottom 3 defense for quarterbacks in a good way in this scenario. Geno Smith has had 2 really solid games, 17 DK points in week 1, kind of the natural letdown spot against a solid defense in the Niners, 7 DK points there. And then last week against the Falcons, who are, an average defense, 22.9 DK points. We know he has strong passing weapons in DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Noah Fant. Like, in this matchup against Detroit, a matchup that you just always want to be targeting, it seems like, because they have been in some high scoring games. Their defense isn't that good. I mean, they blitzed like, I don't know, I think it was like 54% of the time, and they had like one quarterback hit, the Detroit Lions defense. I mean, Jeff Okudah looked good last week, kind of shutting down Jeff Okudah looked good last week, and then you look at like DK Metcalf being able to shut down AJ Terrell a little bit last week. Like, that's intriguing to me, but as a whole, this defense has not been good for Detroit. So like Geno Smith at 5.4 should be able to hit value. And then you talk about DeAndre Swift being out. Jamal Williams is already at a natural value price point going against the Seattle Seahawks, a team in which you want to be targeting as well. They are a poor defense against the run, and so Jamal Williams gets a solid matchup. 20 carries last week, 2 targets, and we know he's someone that can be involved in the passing game if needed. Like, he should be able to hit value. At this price point, he's simply too cheap, especially given the matchup. So I really love Jamal Williams. But on the flip side, like, Rashad Penny might just be the best value running back play we have gotten thus far this season. At 4.9, we're getting a running back that's going to play in over 65% of the running back snaps. Most likely, that's never guaranteed, but he gets a matchup with the Detroit Lions, which is one you certainly want to be attacking. Okay. You can kind of beat up the Lions whichever way you want. They typically is a higher scoring game. We saw Rashad Penny have success last week, 15 opportunities for 7.9 DK points against the Falcons. Can he get a rushing touchdown? Sure, he certainly can. Maybe a couple more passing attempts come his way. He's not going to get game flowed out of this game. At 4.9, that's simply way too cheap. And the biggest problem on this slate that I've had is that this game has way too much value. And it's tough to decide which player not to play. Like DK Metcalf at 6.8, he is probably properly priced. I talk about AJ Terrell kind of shutting him down. Well, he was still able to get to 17.4 DK points. He was still able to score a touchdown. He did have 12 targets, but only 5 receptions. Okay, that's the problem, is that 7 of the passes that went his way weren't incomplete. In week 2 against the Niners, he had a huge play called back. It was like I think it was like a 50-yard catch. Added like 6 more points, and that's another solid week. So like 2 tough matchups to start off the season. One big play called back that maybe didn't have to get called back, and then last week finally solid. Like, he could have a big game. Is he priced up a little bit? He is. It's not as guaranteed. Like, I would much rather play CeeDee Lamb at the same price point, but if you're trying to game stack it, you usually could. Then you got Tyler Lockett, who the last 2 weeks has seen 11 and 11 targets, 22 DK points in week 2, and then 16.6 DK points last week. We're getting these 2 players in their best matchup of the season thus far. And at 5.9, Tyler Lockett is simply too cheap. You could easily play him in a cash build as well. But once again, that's the problem I'm having, is that you could easily put Geno Smith, Rashad Penny, and Tyler Lockett into a cash build, and you feel pretty good about it, except for the fact that you're loading up on a little bit too many of the same team for a cash build. On the flip side, we have St. Brown ruled out, and then a lot of Detroit Lions receivers questionable. DJ Chark is expected to play, and he has been annoying because the big plays have been there for him. Okay. We talk about against Washington, could have easily had a touchdown in that game. A couple of plays didn't come his way that, could have against the Vikings. 5K is a little bit too much to pay out for him, but he is playing enough snaps. And we could project his targets to go up a little bit more. Both him and Josh Reynolds have been playing in over 80% of the snaps. And to me, it kind of does make a little bit of sense to just go with Josh Reynolds, who's slightly cheaper. If you really are trying to game stack this game, I'm fine with that. Okay, so you could easily do that. And you could go Chark just for example purposes. I'll put Chark in there. Then you got TJ Hawkinson, who at 4.1, kind of relatively cheap. 7 targets the first 2 weeks and then 4 last week against the Vikings. Kind of strange, honestly, but with St. Brown out, you could kind of project him to get 7 targets as well. Kind of cheap. And this is just how easy it is to game stack this game. We have all the key players in this game, and we still have 7K left over. So maybe you want to go up from Rashad Penny because you don't want to play a quarterback with the running back. You could do that. So I don't know. Let's just play Khalil Herbert, who I think is a solid value play, and I'll touch on that later on. Let's just do that. And then I'll go up from DJ Chark, just for example purposes. Jonathan Taylor, the highest priced player on the slate, you could easily fit in there. And then you're still paying up for a pretty, relatively good defensive play as well. Whatever. It is that easy to make a solid build and a solid game stack build from this game. It's insane, guys. I'm going to be targeting this game a lot. Okay, that's kind of the issue I'm having, is that it's just such a great game to stack. All right, so now moving on into the Chargers versus the Texans. The Chargers are favored to win by 5.5 points, even though the Houston Texans are at home and have been okay. The game over and under is set at 45. So the biggest issue I'm having with this game is if Keenan Allen does sit, then I actually like the Texans to cover at 5.5 points. If Keenan Allen plays, then I do expect the Chargers to win. It does seem like this offense does need Keenan Allen back. So that'd be the biggest thing I'm worried about there. So looking at it, guys, Austin Eckler should be able to go out and have a great game. He did have a couple of better runs that were called back. flack for holding calls, okay? But the yards per carry has been pretty ugly. Let's not sugarcoat it. Like, the Las Vegas Raiders are a team you are targeting for running backs, and he sucked against them. KC, not someone you're particularly worried about as well, and he didn't do good against them. The Jaguars are looking like they are a good defense. They have kind of shut down Jonathan Taylor and now Austin Eckler. That is something that we might need to monitor. But the Houston Texans have given up almost 150 more rushing yards than any other opposing defense. Like, if this doesn't happen for Austin Eckler, then it might not ever happen. But he has gone 10 and 8 targets the last 2 weeks. Like, if that continues, we should see the rushing efficiency go up. And at 7.7, like, this could be a nice kind of maybe lower owned play than it should be, and a spot where he could smash. Like, Austin Eckler could go off in this one. It really wouldn't be shocking. I do like him as a play. It is kind of tough to stomach it, though, because like, he should be going off. He just hasn't been going off. Damien Pierce going against the Chargers as well could be appealing as well. He had 22 opportunities last week and looked solid doing it against the Chicago Bears. Like, could he have a good game? He certainly could. And at 5.6, he is certainly in play. Now, the Chargers have gotten beat up against the run. I don't mind their defense. Okay, like, if you were going to play someone for the Texans, it would be Damien Pierce. Okay, the Chargers DBs are pretty solid though, so like, I don't want to really go crazy with like playing Brandon Cooks or like Nico Collins. Like, I'm just not going that route. I will say, if Keenan Allen does play, he is a little bit too cheap, guys. I mean, he had 10.6 DK points in one half of football against the Raiders. We know he's their security blanket. Like, he should be getting around 9 targets per game. He should have a super safe floor. So like, he would be too cheap in this game, and he would be someone that I think you could look at as a play. Now, if he's out, you just go with Josh Palmer, who, weird stuff, he had a touchdown that they just didn't care to review at the end of the game last week. I don't know. Could have had a bigger game is the point there. Would have had the 100-yard bonus, would have had another reception, would have had a touchdown. And then also Justin Herbert would have also got the 300-yard bonus as well. Just weird stuff, okay? And you give him another touchdown, you give him that 300-yard bonus, his day looks much better. So like, could Justin Herbert go for 20 DK points? He could as well. Like, I don't hate that play. There's just better, safer plays. Like Josh Allen paying up for him. I think Geno Smith's in a great spot, but like, you could see a path where you're going Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, and maybe you game stack and go Damien Pierce or something. Like, you could do that. Now, just touching on the Tennessee Titans versus the Colts. Now, the game over and under is set at 43. The Colts are favored to win by 3.5 points. I kind of just feel like this game is a toss-up. It's going to come down to whichever team can establish the run first, whether that's Jonathan Taylor or Derrick Henry. That's going to be the question. Now, I do think we do want to be playing Jonathan Taylor this week at 8.8. If you can afford to pay up for him, I think that you do that. This is his second best matchup of the season thus far. Going against the Houston Texans was his best one. Now we get the Tennessee Titans defense, which, they're a bottom 5 defense. We saw what he did against the Texans. This is an easy matchup. He should be able to go out and dominate, and he has looked like his explosive self. It's not like he's lost a step or anything. The plays just haven't exactly been there. I do expect him to score a touchdown. It feels like he's kind of due for a touchdown as well. So like, Jonathan Taylor at a slightly like discounted price point, this is a great spot for him. Like, if you can afford to pay up for him against the Titans, who really, I mean, guys, they gave up 5 yards per carry last week on like 19 total touches or 19 total rushing attempts. You had Josh Jacobs able to score over 12 DK points. Like, Jonathan Taylor should be able to go off and have a solid game. I do expect Derrick Henry's usage in the passing game to be there once again. They kind of just have to do that to keep the running game open. Okay. And he's had 2 pretty solid games on the ground, against the Giants. Solid. 21 rushing attempts for 82 yards, 3.9 yards per carry. That's solid. Just didn't get any work in the passing game, didn't get a touchdown. Last week, he did get work on the ground, was able to score a touchdown. That's really the difference there. And that's always been Derrick Henry. Okay, so he's like a touchdown-dependent play. Once again, much more of a better play on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings, but still, I do see a path in which he has a good game. From there, I don't mind Michael Pittman. He's fine. Now, the Titans D was able to kind of shut down Devontae Adams a little bit, which allowed Matt Collins to go off. I don't really see that happening once again. Like, if you're playing a Colts receiver, it's going to be Michael Pittman, who has been very solid through his 2 games. 9 targets last week, 13 in week 1, averaging 22.7 DK points. Like, he'd be the receiver that I would want to play in this offense. I'm not really playing anyone else for the Titans. Sure, Matt Ryan could kind of stumble his way to 300 passing yards. I don't really like him that much, though. So, switching up into the Giants versus the Bears, this is a game that I just don't want to talk about too much. The game over and under is set at 39.5, and the Giants are expected to win by 3 points. I kind of think this game is just going to be ugly. The Bears have won 2 ugly games already. Maybe you just go with the Bears. They're a little bit healthier as well. Just talking about the running backs, David Montgomery is out in this game. So Khalil Herbert at 5.7 is certainly a play that you want to pay up for. The Giants rushing D is not something that you're really worried about. They're kind of a slightly below average rush D. So Khalil Herbert should be able to go out and have a good game. My biggest takeaway from the Chicago Bears in terms of rushing is that they have good running backs. They're one of the better running back rooms in the league. You look at Treston Ebner, the third string running back, he is solid. I know he's our preseason stud, but he has been solid. So Khalil Herbert, David Montgomery, Treston Ebner, who's ever the RB1 in this offense is something that I want to be chasing. And obviously that's Khalil Herbert, and at 5.7 to probably get around 16 to 20 total opportunities in a pretty solid game. I really don't mind that. Saquon Barkley does feel to be priced up a little bit too much, not playing either of the quarterbacks. The issue that I have with this game, and what I hate about this game, is that we might have to play one of the receivers because the Giants are all banged up. Sterling Shepard's on the IR. Tooney can't play. He's hurt. Robinson's out. And Richie James is probably going to be the receiver that you would want to target. We saw when Kadarius Tooney got more snaps in week 2 at 38%. Richie James snaps went from 74% in week 1 down to 42%, and then it went back up to over 70% last week. So he'd be the one that I guess I would play. But David Sills is going to play a lot of snaps, probably around 74% of the snaps. At minimum price, he's someone you can look at. I'm not excited about this game. And honestly, my biggest takeaway is that you might just end up playing the Bears D, because they're not priced up that much. If you guys have watched my videos thus far this season, you know that I've been on the Chicago Bears defense. I think they're a lot better than people think. And, at 2.7, they are certainly in play going against the Giants, who really they're down a lot of players. And then the one, I guess, another value play that I like is going to be Daniel Bellinger, who's playing over 60% of the snaps the last 2 weeks, 5 targets last week. With the receivers being as banged up as they are, you could see him getting involved in the passing game a little bit more. Once again, at that price point, it's fine. I have found myself kind of playing him because I've been trying to find value tight end plays, and he's been the one I've been ending up on the most. Now getting to the Jaguars versus the Eagles. So both teams have been a little bit better defensively than I saw coming. Okay, and that's a little bit shocking to me. The game over and under for this game is set at 45.5, and I think that's because the defenses have been a lot better. I mean, the Jaguars defense was very impressive last week, and I know Justin Herbert was banged up. They didn't have to really worry about his rushing upside, which they will with the Eagles, which could lead to some big plays for the Eagles. But they're good. There's no ignoring that. And both offenses have been pretty sharp. So I do think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to win this game, but I also think that the Jaguars can cover. So if I was betting on this, I'd bet the Jaguars to cover at plus 6.5. The biggest thing that we need to monitor on this game is that Zay Jones is currently questionable. He missed practice, I think, on Thursday. I expect him to play. But if he sits, that just means Christian Kirk's going to get a little bit more targets in this one. That means Marvin Jones should get a little bit more targets in this one. Christian Kirk playing in over 90% of the snaps at 6.6. He's certainly still in play. He's been someone we've been targeting a lot. It's been beneficial to kind of be on him before anyone else. I think everyone remembers me talking him up in week 1 and even a little bit in week 2. In week 1 where he's way too cheap, that was just an easy lock and load play. But this is a game in which I think you can game stack regardless of if Zay Jones plays. You could go Jalen Hurts, which I would only do this in a stacking situation because I do think it's so much safer to pay $300 or $200 more for Josh Allen. You can pretty much lock in 30 DK points. Like I said, the Jaguars have been pretty good defensively. So I could see a path where that hinders Jalen Hurts. Maybe he gets 20 DK points, but I do think he's going to be a solid play. From there, I don't think you have to play either of the running backs. James Robinson is kind of finally priced up enough. And this game could be a game in which the passing game is what you want to target. A.J. Brown is a fine play. Been targeted a ton, averaging 11 targets per game. He's a solid play. Priced up a little bit too much. Once again, I'd rather just go with CeeDee Lamb at his price point, but you could easily put A.J. Brown in there. Christian Kirk, playing a ton of snaps, being highly productive. I do like him as a play. Devonta Smith, still not really priced up enough. I talked about it against the Vikings that he'd be a fine play, and then I really echoed last week against the Washington Commanders that, at his price point, he's certainly a value. A lot of people were able to take that and have successful weeks last week just playing Devonta Smith and then also a little bit of Matt Collins. He's still not priced up enough, guys. He was highly productive, and it was awesome. Some of the plays that he made last week, 2 insanely elite catches that most NFL receivers don't make. 5.8 is just too cheap, especially when you're trying to game stack that game. And then let's just say Zay Jones sits. You could easily play Marvin Jones then. And then Evan Ingram, for the amount of snaps, he's playing 74% in this game. If you were trying to game stack it, it would make sense to play him. Didn't score that much last week. Not someone you're going crazy with, but you could see a path there. And we are set up pretty good right now game stacking this game. Getting into the Jets versus the Steelers. Now, this is a game in which I'm excited about because Joe Flacco not going to start. We got Zach Wilson back, okay? And man, Joe Flacco's just been a little bit frustrating because he's limited. He's old and he's limited. He's just not going to do that many good stuff. Zach Wilson should open up the offense a little bit more, and he should be able to hit Elijah Moore, who's playing in 90% of the snaps as well, and he's been open. Joe Flacco just hasn't been able to hit him. He had 9 targets last week, his most of the season thus far. 7 targets in week 1, was open a ton that week, and then in week 2, he was open a ton. Joe Flacco just hasn't been able to hit him for some reason. So I'm excited to see what Elijah Moore can do with Zach Wilson back. The Steelers have slowly but surely started to struggle more and more with TJ Watt out. So this is a defense in which I do think you can start to attack now. So you could play Elijah Moore. Garrett Wilson, certainly still in play. For the amount of targets he's getting, 11, 14, 8, he is still too cheap. And it kind of comes because he is only playing in over 57% of the snaps. But when he's in, he's certainly getting targeted. At 5.4, that is still too cheap. You look at Tyler Conklin, 3.6, still too cheap. He's seeing 90% of the snaps. I don't really know if I need to touch on this, but 90% of the tight end snaps for the Giants. 8, 9, and 7 DK points, over 10 DK points in each game. He is a high floor, safe play at a cheap price point in a good matchup. I like him a lot as a play. And then you could even play Zach Wilson at 5.2 if you wanted to go that route, because once again, the Steelers are not that good. I love the Jets' weapons. The issue with this slate is that the running backs, like Najee Harris, kind of priced up a little bit too much for me to want to play him. Breece Hall and Michael Carter are splitting snaps. They both play in about 50% of the snaps. I don't really want to target either of them. I really kind of want to see what they look like with Zach Wilson in the offense. And then I want to point out, Deontay Johnson, I don't really get this. DraftKings for the past year and now 4 weeks, Deontay Johnson has pretty much been a free square. What is going on with Deontay Johnson and the pricing? Someone hates the Pittsburgh Steelers at DraftKings. Someone hates Deontay Johnson at DraftKings. I don't get it. He's been a target hog. He's had a super safe floor each and every week. You pretty much can lock him into hitting value every week. 12 targets, 10 targets, 11 targets, over 10 DK points in every game. A pretty soft matchup against the Jets. You could argue this is his best matchup thus far of the season. And he's only priced at $6K. I don't get it, guys. He should be solid. And then you could play Pickens if you want to. You could play Claypool if you're really trying to game stack this game. But I really think this is kind of a low-owned, kind of sexy stack you can make if you want to go that route. Now, the Panthers versus the Cardinals is certainly an interesting game, just in the sense that Christian McCaffrey could sit, and if he does sit, then I think you would just bet on the Cardinals. The Cardinals are favored to win by 1 right now. The over and under for this game is set at 43.5. Okay, kind of ugly there, but I like the Cardinals regardless. If Christian McCaffrey sits, then I like the Cardinals even more. Talking about the quarterback play, Kyler Murray has not been as good as you would want him to be. Just kind of strange there. We'll see. He just needs to get chemistry going with Marquise Brown a little bit more. It seemed like that developed last week. Baker Mayfield has been trash. Can he be productive against the Cardinals? Maybe. I don't know. He's just been terrible. It's been tough to watch. Some of these games you watch, and it's just man, I hate watching this quarterback running offense. And that's certainly been Baker Mayfield. And that kind of just comes from DJ Moore, who's also playing around 90% of the snaps. He got 6 targets last week. Baker Mayfield missed him for about 4 plays. And 3 where he just has a bad arm on them. DJ Moore has the defender beat. DJ Moore probably should have had, I would say, 60 more receiving yards and 3 more catches. And if he has that, it's a fine, solid day. Baker's just been bad. He's been brutal. And I kind of think if Sam Darnold was not on the IR, they would have went to Sam Darnold already. We'll see. We'll see. Can we predict that Baker's going to get better? No, we can't. But we do know that DJ Moore's getting open, and we do know he's playing a ton. Maybe he gets a little bit more targets if CMC sits, and then he becomes even more appealing. At this price point, just given how open he has been, at 5.3, he's a solid play, I think. A good low-owned play that no one's going to want to play. If you're trying to game stack this game, you could easily play him. And I might try to game stack this. Marquise Brown playing in over 90% of the receiver snaps. I was saying for a while, I'm Marquise Brown is going to be due for a big game. It's going to happen sooner rather than later. It finally happened last week, scoring 31 DK points. That's coming off of 6 targets in week 1, 11, and then 17 last week. He had 14 receptions, guys. He scored 31 DK points without scoring a touchdown. That is insanely difficult to do, okay? And I think those short passing routes are going to be there for him once again. He is currently questionable. I do think he's going to play. And then I do want to point out that Greg Dortch is going to be in a fine spot once again. Rondale Moore is questionable. If he plays, maybe that hinders him a little bit. But AJ Green is ruled out. So Greg Dortch should be locked and loaded into his role, getting around 80% of the snaps, getting a bunch of targets, having that super safe floor. And he is priced up a little bit more to the point where you have to think about it now, at least this week, but he's priced at his floor Like, he's hitting value at this price point every week. So, you could certainly play him still. Like, I don't mind Greg Dortch at this price point as well. If you're trying to game stack this game, you could do a little game stack like this. All right, the Packers versus the Patriots, not really a game that I want to be targeting. It's tough. Like, you could go with Rhamondre Stevenson if you want, who has been playing in 60% of the snaps. It just seems like they're using him as more the bruiser. Like, Damien Harris is a better, I do want to say better. He's a better runner. And I just think they're trying to keep Harris fresh and just kind of using the bigger running back as a bruiser. Stevenson's been solid. Like, it's not like I'm saying Stevenson sucks. I've just always think that Harris is slightly better, on certain runs and situations. So kind of just interesting there. And I can see that flipping. It's kind of a hot hand approach as well. Stevenson is cheap though for the amount of snaps he's playing. Like, he could have a good game. I'm kind of just staying away from players in this game. I do want to point out that Christian Watson is going to be back, and that could possibly open up the running game. And what I mean by that is in week 2, if you watch the game against the Bears, you saw Christian Watson just do. That's all he did the whole game was motion across. That was kind of an indicator as to where they could run the ball pretty much. And he could play again. And that's where, or he's going to play in this game, obviously. But that's where I kind of worry about Romeo Doubs. Like, he is at a soft price point, and he played in like over 85% of the snaps last week, gained 8 targets, scoring 21.3 DK points. The issue is that Christian Watson is going to be back. And I personally think that from what I've seen, from what we've heard, the Packers are very excited about Christian Watson. He does look like their most athletic receiver. It's kind of eye-popping when you just see him on the field. There's just a matter of time before Christian Watson kind of breaks out. That doesn't mean like Romeo Doubs is going to go away. And Allen Lazard is a solid receiver. Maybe we just see less of Randall Cobb, more of Watson. I don't know. Like, I just kind of want to stay away from Doubs for this week. I know a lot of people will probably be on him, but I do expect that snap count to go down a little bit because Watson's playing a little bit more. And then Jacoby Myers is a little bit cheap. If he plays, he's typically a target hog. Can he get to 10 DK points at 4.8? I certainly think so. Like, you could play him if you want to. And then the last game, we got the Broncos versus the Raiders. Not a game that I particularly like too much. The game over and under is set at 45.5. The Raiders are favored to win by 2.5 points. I kind of like the Broncos to win outright. Kind of a get-right spot for them in their offense. The Raiders defense has not been good. They haven't been able to get pressure. Russell Wilson should actually be able to cook in this one, and we've kind of been saying that for a while, so that's a wait-and-see approach. But Melvin Gordon could sit in this game. He's currently questionable, but he doesn't have like an injury designation just yet. Okay, so who knows? He's probably going to play. If he were to sit, Javonte Williams would be a lock. This Raiders defense is one of the worst against opposing running backs. It's one that you've been wanting to exploit. Derrick Henry just went off against them. Like, that was a matchup in which I was targeting specifically. I thought Derrick Henry could have a bounce back week. It finally happened. I kind of think that for Javonte Williams, if Melvin Gordon sits, even if he doesn't, like, they both could have a solid game. And then receiver-wise, they're both pretty good against receivers. Tight end-wise, they're kind of poor against. I don't really like anyone in this game, honestly, unless Melvin Gordon sits. Then you just lock and load Javonte Williams. But that's all I have for this video. It's a little bit faster than last week, so hopefully you guys appreciate that. Let's have a good week. And as always, guys, let's keep cashing.